Now, once students are finished with their flow chart, they might want to take it a step further. And in doing that, you may ask them to fill out a different type of diagram organizer, just to show the relationships. Now I have my shapes here, my main types of parallelograms. And I'm going to get my 2 from my Venn diagram. And I'm going to look at this overarching quadrilateral sheet. I can see in the main rectangle that everything encompassed inside of it is a quadrilateral. So all of these shapes here will be a quadrilateral. From our flow chart, we saw that the next thing that we were looking for was a parallelogram. Now, we know that the parallelogram had to have 2 sides that were, I'm going to draw this one right here because we're going to use the shape twice. Opposite sides that were parallel, 2 of them. So this we have here is our parallelogram. Now, you're going to want to have your students also refer back to the chart and maybe the attributes chart and their flow chart to see that the next thing that we could put into these are the 2 main types of parallelograms that we have in the hierarchy of parallelograms. And that would be the rectangle and the rhombus. We also noted that a square is right here in the center. And that's because a rectangle shares the properties of the square, and a rhombus also shares the properties of a square. But a square in and of itself has to have both the 4 right angles and all sides are equal and parallel. The last 3 shapes that we have here would be our other 2 in our family tree of quadrilaterals, and that would be the kite and the trapezoid. Now, I have 2 trapezoids here because we have one trapezoid that is actually called an isosceles trapezoid that you might introduce to your students or have done so already. It wasn't on my original attribute chart, but you might want to take it a step further. And this has exactly 1 pair of parallel sides, but it also has opposite angles that are supplementary, and it has 1 pair of congruent legs. And you'll see here that this trapezoid here has 1 pair of parallel sides, but you'll see here that the angles are not congruent. So we'll just label that trapezoid. Okay. The last thing that you might want to do to challenge your students during this lesson would be to look at one last type of organizer. This one already has the quadrilaterals in it. You could always pose this diagram here that shows the different types of shapes and see if the students then can label the different shapes based on what they saw in their flow chart, the attributes chart, and their other quadrilateral graphic organizer that we just put together. So in looking at this here now, I think right away they would identify that this is a square. And then, after all the exploration we did between squares and rhombuses and squares and rectangles, they could also see that these would be rectangles. Because a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. And we know that the other side would then be our rhombuses. Or rhombi. I'd have to check that. We'll just put rhombus side for right now. Then we know surrounding the outer rhombus, square, and rectangle, we have our parallelograms. And then on the outermost, you can see here, not related to the parallelograms, we have some trapezoids. Now, they might want to note that the kite is not a part of this organizer. They could maybe then come up with some type of, have a discussion on where or how they could rearrange this diagram, where they might place a kite if it was to go on this graphic organizer. It would all be up to you if you wanted to take it to that level. Now, once you're finished with all of these different organizers, we hope that you'd be able to note that you have reached an understanding of the standards, that your understanding attributes belong to a category of two-dimensional figures and also belong to subcategories of that category, and also that you can classify two-dimensional figures in a hierarchy based on properties. Thanks for watching.